Welcome to Wise Woman Builds. I am Maria Danner Bowie, and I am happy that you're here. I am excited to share with you a message that I received this morning during my morning devotion, and it is on how a woman uses her divine femininity to fight. I want to give you a little perspective. It seems like in this world today, we are struggling with the identity or the designation of who can be called a man or a woman or a male or a female. I'm going to leave that debate to those who want to spend that time. But here are some considerations. The fastest man on earth, by record, is Usain Bolt. He can run 100 meters in 9.58 seconds. That's 27.33 miles per hour. By comparison, the fastest woman on record is or was Florence Griffith Joyner, whom we call FloJo. She ran 100 meters in 10.49 seconds. That calculates to 23.46 miles per hour. So we have a Usain Bolt at 27.33 miles per hour, fastest man, and a Florence Griffith Joyner at 23.46 miles per hour. We know that we would not put Florence Griffith Joyner, if she was still alive, God rest her soul, in the same race with Usain Bolt because he has almost a full second of speed and power over her. There isn't a woman in the WNBA who can outdunk a LeBron James or a Steph Curry or a Michael Jordan. I'm not going to try to get into these basketball names, but I've seen men dunk. It's impressive. And women just don't have that vertical lift. They don't have the leg muscles to jump as high as a man can. There have been some men who have transitioned from male to female by these processes and procedures and chemical enhancements or whatever you call them, and they are allowed to compete in women's sports. There are men who have been breaking the women's record in running and swimming. There are MMA fighters who are in the ring with women, competing as women, though we know that they're men, and they still have the power of men, as is demonstrated by their ability to knock a woman out, overpower her, subdue her, much quicker than a woman fighting against a woman would be able to do. Now, the point of all of this is to say that we as women can't fight in this world as a man, toe to toe, power for power, strength for strength, as a man can. We will not be successful fighting a man as a man would fight a man. It's simple science, it's simple physiology, it's simple biology, it's just common sense. And so the question is, how does a woman fight in her divine femininity? And I'm going to take you through some biblical examples of women who showed us how women should fight. There aren't any examples in the Bible where women are throwing hands with a man. It doesn't happen. But there are women who are victorious in the way that they fought. They fought and they won. The first woman I want to talk about is Jael. She is found in the book of Judges. She is a woman who is called a Kenite. She wasn't a member of the Israelite tribe, but a friendly tribe to them. And Jael had a man named Sisera, a Midianite chief warrior, run into her tent and say, I need some rest, basically. And Jael used her divine femininity. She said, oh yes, come on in. She gave him a bowl of milk. So it was a beautiful bowl. And when Sisera went to sleep, Jael took a tent peg, pounded it in his temple, and killed him. And when the Israelites came in pursuit of Sisera, Jael brought him into the tent and said, here is the man you're looking for, already dead. Jael didn't scream when Sisera ran into her tent, oh my goodness, you're going to kill me. She didn't let him know that she knew who he was. She didn't give away her position that she was on the side of Israel. She just gave him what he asked for, a bowl of milk. And she let him go to sleep. And then she used her wisdom at that point when he was vulnerable to make her move. And she won a great battle for the Israelites. Another woman in the Bible who shows us how to fight with our divine femininity is Abigail. Abigail was married to a man named Nabal. His name means fool. And this fool, I'm going to call him what he was, decided to insult David and his men when they asked Nabal for food to supply them during a time of festival. Now, David and his men had been surrounding Nabal's shepherds and herders and keeping all of them safe for about a 3-month period. And when David asked Nabal for food, David said, "Why should I give you any food? You're running from your master, and who do you think you are asking me for some food?" And he said some other things that insulted David. And David suited up and was going to go in and kill Nabal and every man in his household, relative, servant, whatever. He was going to kill everybody. The servant told Abigail that David was coming to, handle his business. And Abigail, in her divine femininity, put together a feast, loaded it up on donkeys, got up on a donkey herself and rode down to David and said, "Hey, I wasn't in on that. When they told me what you wanted, I brought it all to you. Don't let the foolishness of my husband cause you to have blood on your hands. Here's everything you need." And in her divine femininity, in the wisdom that God gave her, Abigail saved all of the people in her family. And later, her husband Nabal died. And David, recognizing the gift of a wise woman, a woman who knew how to fight a battle, married Abigail. So we have 2 women, Jael and Abigail so far, who haven't picked up a stone, who haven't thrown a punch, who used a different type of weaponry that saved Israel and saved their family. Another woman who used her divine femininity, and you may or may not agree with me, but she did it, is Bathsheba. Bathsheba, the beautiful woman bathing on a roof, whom King David saw and found out who she was, that she was a married woman, and said, "I don't care, send her to me anyway." And she got pregnant and the first baby died. But apparently there was something about Bathsheba, because not only did David go to her and comfort her, David and she had another son named Solomon. And not only did they have that son named Solomon, they had 4 other children together. She produced more children with King David than any of his other queens or concubines. Now, the thing that is really, really cool about Bathsheba's divine femininity is that not only did she get David to come back for more, but she also got him to promise that her son Solomon would sit on his throne after him. Now, the thing that is really noteworthy about Solomon is that he is the 5th son, the 5th living son, because one of the sons that he had with Bathsheba died as an infant. But David had 4 sons who were older than Solomon, and if it were just based on succession to the throne, Solomon wouldn't have been in line. But again, Solomon, because his mother Bathsheba meant something more to King David, Bathsheba knew how to use her divine femininity, and David promised her that her son would sit on the throne and no one else's son. Women who know how to use their divine femininity have power that goes beyond their physical prowess. David, King David, when he was old, had a woman named Abishag who wasn't his wife, wasn't his concubine, but who would lay next to him and keep him warm. This Abishag never opened her mouth, but she was privy to all the secrets of the king, so much so that when Adonijah wanted to vie for the throne, even though he kind of suspected or knew that Solomon was going to be the one to reign after David, wanted Abishag because he knew that she knew everything about that kingdom, because she was, because of her divine femininity, able to sit or lie in the presence of King David. And he knew that if she were beside him, she would be able to help him fight and retain control over that throne. Queen Esther in the capital of Persia was selected by Xerxes as his queen. Now, she was a beautiful woman, And apparently she was highly favored. Not only was she beautiful, but King Xerxes loved her. And Queen Esther, using her divine femininity, using a way of fighting that didn't require her to be aggressive and loud and confrontational, was able to save her fellow Jewish people. She dressed herself beautifully. She bathed and perfumed herself. And she walked quietly with dignity before the throne of her husband. And he could have killed her. But because she found favor with him, because she didn't present herself as an aggressive, loud, demanding woman, was able to speak to him. She had his ear and she had his heart. And he listened to her. And when she turned in the enemy of the Jews, Haman, the Amalekite, King Xerxes fought for her. He saved the Jewish people because he was fighting for his queen. Queen Esther never had to raise her voice. She never had to demand that he put aside this enemy that was sitting right next to him as she and he were at the banquet with him. She only had to ask quietly, softly, respectfully. Now, the last woman that I want to talk about is a woman named Hannah. Hannah was married to a man named Elkanah, and Hannah was barren. Hannah had a rival wife named Peninnah, and Peninnah would taunt Hannah because Peninnah was able to bear children, which is why she was there in the first place, because it said that Elkanah loved Hannah, and he would sit to her and talk to her and say, when she was crying because Peninnah had broken her down, and he would say, "Why are you crying? Don't I love you enough? Don't I love you? Is my love not better for you than children?" But it never says that Hannah got upset with Peninnah. She didn't get vicious and go toe to toe. She didn't tell her off and put her back in her place and say, "The only reason you're here so you can have children." And she didn't respond to Elkanah and tell him that he had hurt her by bringing another woman into the fold, which was his right to do. And in those days, a lot of men did that. Hannah did something else. In her divine femininity, in the wisdom that God gave her, she went to God himself. She went to the temple and she prayed and asked God for a son. And she said, "If you give me a son, I'll give him back to you all the days of his life." And God answered Hannah's prayer and gave her a son named Samuel. And of course, Hannah gave Samuel to God. He became the first prophet of Israel, but Hannah went on to have more children. And the point with Hannah is this: she used the most important weapon that a woman who walks in her divine femininity has in her disposal or in her arsenal. She used the weapon of prayer. It tells us in 2 Corinthians 10th chapter 4th verse that the weapons that we use are not the weapons of this world. They are not carnal. The weapons we use have the divine power to demolish strongholds. And so a wise woman, a woman who's walking in her divine femininity, will remember that the weapon that she has in her disposal, in her arsenal, the most powerful weapon that she has is prayer. And here's another thing. The Bible tells us that a gentle answer turns away wrath. Instead of going toe-to-toe with a man and being vicious and sharp-tongued, learn how to speak to him in a calm place, because it's very hard to fight against someone who's not fighting back with you. And please don't be foolish and think that you can overpower a man with your physical abilities. Now, of course, I'm not going to say that we can't pick up weapons, which I'm not talking about that. This is not this type of video. But I'm saying in a hand-to-hand combat, most women are going to lose. It would be foolish of us to try to fight a man in his own way, with his own methods. We as women have to learn how to use our divine femininity to fight battles. We have to be smart and sneaky sometimes, like Jael. We have to go behind a man's back sometimes and do the right thing, like Abigail. We have to lay quietly by his side and listen to him just tell all of his business, like Abishag. And we have to be like Bathsheba. Sometimes we have to be seductive. We have to use our feminine power, our sultriness, our sexiness, our beauty to get what we want. There may be some who want to crucify me for saying that, but I'm saying that if you are a woman, you know the power of your femininity. If you are a real woman, You know what you have, and if you're wise, you know how to use it. And ultimately, if we are a woman who knows how to use her divine femininity to fight the battle that we have to fight and win for our family, for our marriages, for our jobs, for in whatever way that we want to prevail, we have to use that divine weapon called prayer. If, as a woman walking in her divine femininity, we understand who we are, whose we are, and what we have at our disposal, we're undefeatable. If we truly want to win any battle that comes against us, all we have to do is suit up. When a woman who is walking in her divine femininity puts on the armor of God, she is covered from the top of her head to the soles of her feet. She has on the helmet of salvation. She has on a breastplate of righteousness. She has a shield of faith. She has the belt of truth buckled around her waist. She has her feet fitted in the gospel of peace. And most of all, she has the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God. She has the very weapon that demolishes strongholds at her disposal. And all she has to do is stand still. So, wise woman, woman who wants to walk in your divine femininity, remember that you don't have to fight as the world fights, and you do not have to go toe to toe with a man who is stronger than you. You have everything you need to win, and he won't even know what hit him.